Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-hosts Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That is Kenny Simpson. Coach, we are a few weeks in now to this 2025 season. You're continuing to find success, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we're winning. You know, it's always good to win, and we've got a pretty good group. And, we've got a long way to go. It's still early, but we were able to win Friday night. And so we're now 3-0, and the challenges get bigger. We're now going to take on the number one school in the state of Missouri. So we're kind of excited about a really unique, cool opportunity for our kids. But, obviously the games get tougher as you move. We were able to win a rivalry game, and those are always good to win just because of the atmosphere. It's always cool to play in front of, 5, 6, 7,000 people and have a chance to show off what your kids can do. And it was good to see our kids come out. We were up 34-3 at the half. So it was one of those where we came out early and kind of established ourselves, and didn't finish as well as I would have liked to, but I think won pretty comfortably. So that's good to see.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for because, being a non-district, which y'all picked up an additional non-district game, right? Or conference. Y'all districts or conferences?
Conference, but we did pickups. We have one more non-conference game this Friday.
And are y'all traveling up there, or are they coming to you?
We're meeting in a neutral site, so it'd be kind of cool. It's like in northern Arkansas. So they'll drive about 2 hours. We'll drive about 2 hours. And we're taking our kids out of school early that day, kind of making it a really fun event. And we've never played at a school from another state, and then you're playing a really, really good school. I think they're 61-5 the last couple of years and have not lost a regular season game. So we're excited, for the opportunity to go compete with them and kind of see where we are.
Yeah, that's dream scenario for a coach. I feel like win or lose, you took on a really good challenge, right? You can't just not do things because you might not win the game. But man, taking on the number one from another state that's got to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, watching their film, man, you can tell it's Marionville, Missouri. Coach Grubbs does a good job with them, and he's just watching the film, man. Those kids get after it, and it's going to be fun. I think our kids get after it too. I think I don't know what our record is. I think the last 3 or 4 years we're like 29-3. So I think it's two teams that are used to winning, and somebody's not going to win Friday.
Somebody's not going to win. Man, that's awesome. What good stakes. That's got to be a lot of fun. Our season is all right. We took our first defeat Friday. Just kind of a game of a lack of execution. It wasn't anything too big. I think it's good to find yourself sometimes. We're on a pretty emotional roller coaster after a big win in week 1. And so it'll be nice to see the kids if they can bounce back or not. It'll kind of come down to them, right? Coaches are going to keep coaching their tails off and trying to get that execution out of them. So we'll see, man.
That's a part of the year where, we're talking with our kids of, we're getting better, and that's the goal. I mean, the scores really don't matter until you get into conference play. And so just want to keep getting better and play our best football later. We're testing our depth. I feel like we can't get through a game without one of them being out the next week or two. Hopefully, knock on wood, we've only had one out for the year. We're hoping, had a couple get hurt last Friday. We're hoping we'll get them back at some point this season. But we've got a lot of young kids step up and play well, and I think if we get all these kids back, like we hope we are, that's going to pay dividends for us, I think, down the stretch run here.
Yeah, it is important, I think, as coaches, we sit back and make sure that the wins and losses don't define your season right now. Of course, you're Kenny Simpson. You're going into the state semifinals at 14-0. That's a pretty good definition of a season. But, a lot of us are trying to take that next step. So, testing kids out, getting kids in different positions. We're all still learning, right? Once again, we're new head coach and the staff is shaking up a little bit. So just learning each other and figuring those things out. So I like these early games for that right there, just to kind of figure out who we are, what we're going to be good at, what are the coaches good at, are we in the right position, stuff like that. So that's a good one. Well, man, let's if you don't mind here, Coach, share some ways that we can make things simple for our staff and athletes. Those of y'all watching live, we're going to go to do an ad here. I completely forgot the quote of the week. So when we come out, we'll do quote of the week, and then we'll jump into our sponsors and whatever.
You're good, man.
All right, here we go. All right, Coach, appreciate that. Completely forgot the quote of the week. So let's go ahead and knock that out real quick.
Yeah, quote of the weeks. Again, all of these are taken from the Team Themes books. So if you're not doing this, we do this with our kids every week. We've done now 4 of them, and it's been good for my assistant coaches to do them, and our kids really enjoy them. So you definitely don't have to go buy one of my books to do this. You can do it on your own. But we do offer 5 different team theme books that are basically a word of the week, quotes, questions, ideas you can use for your team. So this one comes out of Team Theme Volume 5. That's the most recent one. It's from Pat Summit. I think it's the word of the week that week was competitive. It says you can't always be the strongest or the most talented or the most gifted person in the room, but you can be the most competitive. And that's big. Something we've tried to work with our kids about is a lot of things we don't control. We do control our attitude, our effort, our willingness to do what needs to be done. And I think that's a really good quote from her. And all those books, by the way, are available over at fbcoachsimpson.com if you want them. I highly encourage you guys, if you're not already doing words of the week with your kids or doing some kind of curriculum where you're talking to them about more than football, you're missing the boat. And it just takes 5 or 10 minutes. And man, it's been really, really good for our kids. So encourage you to do it, whether it's my stuff or someone else's stuff or your own stuff, whatever it is, spend 5 minutes a day talking to your kids about something that's more than just football.
Yeah, absolutely. The competitiveness, I feel like, is one of those things that we're watching kind of disappear. And so I appreciate that you guys are preaching it back into them over there, because we've kind of noticed I've only been at the game 6 years now, but the amount of friends that kids have on other teams, and they are extreme buddies. So we're back in the day, like, look, I'm a Lone Grove graduate, and if you went to Plainview, we didn't even know your name. Like, we weren't, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't a great football player. No one was going to know my name anyway, but we especially weren't friends with those kids, right? That was your rival for a reason.
Well, we played our big rival the other night, and our kids know their kids, and their kids know our kids, and there were 47 accepted penalties. So there's still competitiveness in Arkansas over there at Batesville High School. Their kids got after it. Proud of those kids. Our kids got after it, and they probably hung out after the game was over. But during the game, it was heated and it was intense. And I think that's what you want to teach your kids is we're going to get after it. If somebody wins, somebody loses. But, you want to go hang out with them after the game, I don't care. But during the game, that's not your buddy,
For sure. Awesome. Real quick, I want to mention our sponsors, Ace Sports being our title sponsor. If you haven't gotten a quote or had somebody come in and talk to you about Ace Sports signs, their video boards, now is definitely the time to do that. Mark.bridges@acesports.com. If you don't want to directly reach out to Mark, you can DM me and I'll get you in contact and we'll get in a phone call or something. But Ace Sports providing you with, it's kind of the cheat code to fundraising is what I continue to call it. Great quality product, the best product on the market in high school video boards. So it doesn't matter if you're a basketball coach, a baseball coach, football, whatever. They got some type of system for you. acesports.com. And also Winning Edge Performance Analytics. We have been using Winning Edge every week. It's really it's an unfair advantage for us in the booth when we can look over and see which plays are hitting well, which ones are efficient, which one. And sometimes coach can see that with the eye test, but we were on play number like 128 at halftime the other day. Approximately half of those are ours on offense. So you're looking at 64 plays and you want to remember exactly which play call was efficient 70% of the time. It's kind of hard to do. So over at Winning Edge Performance Analytics, they're letting you get in-game insight and then having it all tagged at the end of the night. On Friday night, you're done. Your film is tagged. That's been one of the great parts of it as well. Sweet, Coach. Let's jump into some conversation here. So we're talking today about in-season adjustments, and this ranges in variety of I guess, kind of subtopics here. But, it might be personnel changes, it might be scheme changes, it might be even philosophy a little bit. You probably shouldn't be changing your philosophy too much, but you may have to kind of pull the reins back on something or open some things up, right? And so I guess kind of just right off the bat, let's talk about what situations cause you to have an in game an in season adjustment on a fairly large scale.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most obvious one is you lose. That's the easiest one to kind of, things aren't going well. That could be a loss, or it could be you're not playing up to the potential you thought you were going to play up to. But obviously, when those things happen, you're going to constantly make adjustments. We're 3-0 right now. We're constantly making adjustments, so that never goes away.
Right.
But there are times when you go, man, whatever we thought was going to be it's clearly not it because we're not being successful at it. So I think the number one reason that you're probably looking at making adjustments is lack of success within whatever you thought was going to be successful. I think you could also look at, now I want to be careful on this. Like when we make adjustments, that doesn't always mean you're putting a lot in, because you got to think of it kind of like a cup or a bowl. It can only hold so much. So if you're pouring stuff in, something's coming out. Like you got to take something out. So I think that's one of the things we try to work on with the staff is we may add one or two things, but we're not gonna put 1,000 things in unless something's coming out. And I think this episode we're talking more large scale changes, not like week to week, but you might be 1 or 2 or 3 weeks in here and going, whatever we're doing is not working, and we got to make a big change here. If you're going to do that, you got to kind of look at what are we going to keep. So what is working? Hopefully you can keep your terminology. Like I think that's important that you can at least keep the same verbiage. That way your drills kind of keep working with it. But usually it's because things are not being successful. And so you got to look at, okay, what's not being successful? Are we not teaching it well? Are we not adjusting well? Or is it just not matching the guys we have on our team?
Right.
If it's not matching the guys you have on your team, then you got to make a change. I mean, you got to make it because you can't keep running, the same stuff that's not going to work. Again, it could be trimming things out. It could be small little things. I think you also look at, it could be a tendency type deal. Maybe people have figured out what you're doing, and so they've loaded up to stop that. And your adjustment might simply be in having a couple compliments. Like, okay, we want to do this, but every time we do this, we're getting man zero. We don't have any answers, or we're getting, cover 4 or whatever it might be. We're getting something that's hurting us and we don't have answers for it. That doesn't necessarily mean you got to get rid of your whole system. It might be, what are some compliments that go against that specific look? Daniel, you've got a few more on here. I don't want to steal all yours, but I will take one other one. Another one on there, I think it's a big one, is like your personnel and injuries. Right now, fortunately for us, we've had some depth, but we've had at one point or another, we've had 7 kids out, like 7 kids out that we're hoping are going to be able to play for us here down the road. And so when you have that, you got to look at, okay, we may get hit in the same area where all of a sudden we got 3 linemen are out, or we got 3 DBs are out, or 3 linebackers, or whatever that might be, or maybe it's your quarterback. There are injuries that will dictate a change in the scheme that you need to make. Not always, but usually you get hit in the wrong spot, or you get hit with multiple kids in the same spot. It may force you to look at, okay, we really want to run a 3-4. That's what we've lived in, but shoot, we don't have any outside backers. But I got 17 defensive linemen. We may have to just go to a 4-3, and then use our terminology, but we're playing a defensive end at outside linebacker, and we're just moving him into the box. Or I want to run cover 4, cover 2, cover whatever, but I really only have 3 DBs. So we're going to put a linebacker at strong safety and permanently roll him down, and we're going to be in a 3-3 look, running cover 3. And so there are things I think you have to do due to injuries and personnel. You might want to really run a 3-4 and you've been good to it, but you just don't have those guys that you thought you were. Or you may be a spread offense that you were air raid and your quarterback's out, or your receivers are all hurt. What does that look like? That hopefully you have a system where you can use the same stuff and just make small changes. But there may come a time where you just go, man, we got to do something. We got to do something drastically different right here. And I think those are the main things that cause you to do that.
Injuries is a big one because you immediately, not only do you lose an athlete on the field, but in the right positions, like you said, Kenny, you might lose the football IQ as well, right? So yeah, I lost a quarterback, and now the kid who's usually slinging it around isn't out there. But also, he was kind of my field general. He was the one that was making sure people were in the right spots. I know you talked about your son Braden being that guy for you last year, right? And then you're going at it without him right now. That's a defensive field general that was lining everyone else up, making sure everyone else knew what the calls were, and now he's gone. And so you have to lean on these other kids who have gotten comfortable not having to do that. It makes it fairly difficult. So I think that has to be the first key piece there is just like, what are you doing to your playbook? Maybe it is a full scheme change. But what are you going to do when one of those key positions goes down? It always seems to be quarterback on offense. That's the guy that makes it go. If we don't have a dude that knows what's going on there, or maybe, if we lost our quarterback right now, it's a freshman that starts. He lacks years of experience behind the other guy. And then how much is that, kind of going to blow his mind when he steps out there and he's the dude and we're trying to get him to throw these air raid concepts and RPOs and moving all these people around. And he's like, I'm freaking out just because I don't really remember what to read now. You know what I mean? So it's
I can say right now, if you want to make sure it happens to you, don't practice for it.
Right.
I've done that a lot as a young coach where I don't think we got a backup quarterback 1 rep this week. That's almost a guarantee. Get ready.
Yeah.
Or our backup center or our backup whatever. You got to practice that,
Yeah. So now you're fighting kind of the fog of war and his already lack of experience. So, I think another one is regression and execution. So we kind of get out of our team camps and fall camp and such, right? And you kind of feel that your team is going in a certain direction. Maybe you're holding back some stuff even, but you look good. Things are crisp. And then you get in those first few games and like people start doing other stuff, right? Not everyone's playing their base. And our execution goes down. Maybe a kid just isn't as good as we thought. We were covering him up with certain things with our simplicity. And now it's, that kid just isn't playing ball at the level we need him to. Kind of goes into that misevaluating players as well. You might have thought you just had a dude and it kind of, he's the t-shirts and shorts, right? Everybody looks good in t-shirts and shorts. And then you get the pads on. You can have the same thing going from fall camp into real games. So, I think if you've misevaluated a player, you may have to be making some pretty big changes.
And opposite. There's been times where he's a dude, and we got him out there at X receiver touching the ball twice. We better figure something out,
Yeah. So positive and negative ways you might be changing your scheme, right? We're jumping to the second part here, Coach. Just why is it important that we evaluate these weekly?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it. Injuries happen every week, so you're going to have every week things happen, and you're going to have guys that step up and unfortunately, like you said, they're going to regress week to week. And, that's got to be a constant evaluation of, which of our kids are really kind of rising to the occasion. And I've coached now for a while, and so every year you have a kid outperform or multiple kids outperform what you probably thought they were going to do. And unfortunately, every year you have some kids that either get injured or they don't perform
right
where you were hoping they were going to perform. It's just, and we're around them all the time. And I've been doing this for a minute. We're pretty good at projecting, but it's different, when the lights come on and some guys their senior year, they're just a different kid. Like they just play at a completely different level. And some of these young guys you thought were going to be ready, they're not. So a lot of times that's something you have to constantly evaluate. One of the worst things I think you can have as an offense is where your best guys aren't getting the ball. I mean, that's your main job as an offensive play caller is make sure your best guys are getting the ball. And there's games I've come out of before where even wins, we came out of it and went, man, our best kid touched the ball like 6 times. Like that's not acceptable. I've got to do a better job as an offensive coordinator, either working our scheme or moving him positions. Something's got to change. He's got to get it more, and so I think you got to look at that kind of stuff. I think sometimes you just have to kind of look at your scheme. As your scheme, like you mentioned, Daniel, have people found something that's hurting your scheme? We're mainly talking offense here, but it could be defense too. Are you giving up a ton of points because they're finding you're not handling trips well, or you're not handling empty well, or you're not handling whatever well, or they found a guy in your corner, or they found your outside backer, or are they picking on different people? And what's your next move in scheme to fix that? Or on the offensive side of the ball, it could be, they've learned that if they just load the box, you don't have a lot of answers. So what are your answers going to become in that world? So, I mean, it 100% could be scheme. Right. And I think we owe it to our kids to always evaluate what are we struggling with and what's the next move. I walked through our office this morning. Our defensive coordinator's got a little chart up there. It says, if they do this, our adjustment. And he's got like 5 different things. He does it every week, because he's got to look at, okay, if this is happening, what's our answer going to be? What if this happens? What's our answer going to be? What if that happens? What's our answer going to be? Because you can't just line up and go, well, we thought we could do this against trips, and you get roasted 3 times. What's next? Because you can't just keep living in that or make the adjustment at halftime. Do we have different things we can go to? Maybe it's a different personnel package. Maybe it's a different look. So I think it's important we're constantly doing that. I think you have to look at your opponents. There are games on your schedule that are going to be more difficult probably than other games on your schedule. And those may require different things. So, for instance, we're playing a team this week, this coming up week, really talented. They play about 16 or 17 kids. Now, those kids are really, really good. But what's an adjustment we can make? Well, let's go up tempo and try to use our depth. Like, that's something we have an advantage of. Up tempo and use our depth. Well, 2 weeks from now, we might be playing a team that has 80 kids on the roster and we have 45. Probably not a great adjustment that week. Maybe that week we want to use more shifts and trades and smoke and mirrors to go at them. It just depends on who you're playing and what you can throw at them schematically that will help your kids. It could be on the defensive end. We're playing a team that we do a little hit chart of where they're catching balls. So we want to make sure we're calling coverages that put guys in those areas. So we might be basing out a cover 2 read, but this week, they're throwing a ton of dig routes or whatever it is, and we want to get into a cover 4 look, or we want to get into a roll cover 3 to take away that whole shot. So scheme, I think, matters. I'm hoping that within your defensive scheme, you already have these words, but I've seen times where our defense, they'll put in a special kind of coverage for that week, and they'll just call it the name of the opponent because it's something we haven't done before.
Right.
But but we teach it like this. Hey, it's just like blank. Here's the small adjustment these 1 or 2 kids have to make. So it doesn't freak everybody out. We're not putting in a whole new scheme. It's just another little look on a blitz or another little look on a coverage. And so I think you have to constantly be doing that, even if you're winning and having success. That's something you need to constantly be looking at. What can we do? Or maybe for us on offense, it's a new way to get to the same play, like a new shift or a new motion or a new formation or a new something. It's kind of an inexpensive add to get to what we wanted to run anyway. Maybe they've got like team we're playing this week, Division I linebacker. Well, obviously, I'm not sure where they're going to line him up, but we're going to try to make sure we go the other way.
That's right.
And it's just kind of common sense. He lines up on the tight end wing. What do we have that can run the other direction? Can we balance our formation? Can we shift? Can we just run the ball weak side? What are our answers if he does that or he plays inside backer? What are our answers if he plays there? What are our answers if they've got a Division I corner or a safety or whatever? What are our answers we have that we're going to go to that week? I think you have to constantly be doing that because the other team's paid also. Like they're going to do some things to try to stop you that you've not seen, and you better have answers for those things. I think you also have to adjust to what you do well. It can be a positive thing. There's been years we always kind of assume Buck's going to be a staple play for us.
Right.
That's going to be one of our best plays. I remember a couple of years ago where what we would call belly has been our better play. We go back and kind of chart it. Hey, we're running buck and we're getting 4 or 5 yards of carry, not bad, but man, we're running belly. We're getting like 7, 8 yards of carry, and that's become a better play against X opponent because they're loading up to stop buck sweep, or it could be something else. Hey, every time we've played these guys, they've really struggled with quick game, or they've really struggled with screen game, or they've really struggled with counter. Whatever it is, that stuff we're going to highlight. Now, again, I don't know if that's stuff that you're adding in, but each week we usually will add in a couple little wrinkles for that week. It might be a trick play. It might be a shift or a motion. It might be an adjustment on a route, because right now we go trips. We've thrown flood a ton. So, we've got a wrinkle off of that. We don't know if we need to show it yet or not, but that might be the adjustment this week. Every time we've gone trips and we've run kind of a 3-level concept, well, they start jumping that. What's our answer for that? Maybe
Right.
that's a double move, or maybe that's something else. So I think those are things you have to have every week you go into playing a game.
Yeah. I really like the one there at the end of Justin, what you do well, because there's a certain amount of stuff. So just like our offense, right? We show a certain amount of stuff. We have like a checklist. We're going to put every week on the field. You're going to see these things because, one, we need to remind ourselves to get into these things that we've practiced, so we're not practicing and wasting time. And 2, we believe that's part of our identity. That's what we do. We come out and we show you a ton of stuff. And just like you, Kenny, we're showing a lot of stuff to get right back to a few plays. If some of those may not be what we do the best, but we're going to show them a little bit to keep people honest, to keep defensive coordinators busy. All right. I mean, that's, if you have to turn on huddle on Saturday morning and break down 45 formations, you're probably not real happy. So, but migrating and kind of watching things work back to the things that are most successful most of the time, I think is where just about every coach starts going. If you continue just throwing crap at the wall and see what sticks for the whole season, you're probably, you didn't come in with a very good plan, right? And you're probably not going to find a lot of success at the end of it. Now, you might just have the dudes, and that's what gets you by. That happens. But I think you really do have to start paring things down and getting them back to what you're good at, what your kids are good at. I love that you said, like, hey, Buck's our play, but sometimes it has to be belly. I remember Joe was a power counter guy, and then inside zone started hitting. He's like, hey, maybe we're an inside zone team this year, right? And he kind of had to lean towards that. We've seen that with our team. We want to be gap scheme team, and sometimes the zone stuff just works a little better. So whether it's the kids that perform in it, or maybe it's easier to count and figure out who you're due to, I don't know. I don't know why. You could probably do a doctoral dissertation over the mindset of a kid going into any one of these plays to make them successful, but we don't have all that time. So we just got to figure out what's hitting well and what's not, and kind of migrate that way.
I'd say too, if you're a big formation guy, now one caveat you need to be aware of is just understand your tendencies. Like, I'm aware when we get an unbalanced, we probably run strong 98% of the time.
Right.
Like, I'm aware of that. Like, I'm not going to, but sometimes we go into that and we go, well, we better run a weak play just for no reason, just so we balance our tendencies out. You lose 4 yards because they didn't line up well to unbalanced. So I think you got to see it for what it is. Be aware you have tendencies. Like this week we lined up in tight end nub trips. We get in that set a lot. I would say probably 60% of the time, 70% of the time, we're probably throwing the ball on that. So it's a common set we get into to run a lot of trips game. We got in that set 4 over 3. Okay. Safety cheated over, and we ran backside buck for about 25 yards because there was nobody over there. So it's, run what you see, but don't think, man, I better be balanced because I don't want them to get a tendency. Like, if they had lined up in 2 over 3 and I'd run buck into bad numbers and lost 4 yards, that's a bad play call. So you want to be able to run your whole offense out of any set, but don't think I better break a tendency and run a bad play just to break a tendency.
For sure. Yeah. And it's something I've carried from you for many moons now, is that sometimes tendencies are good. Sometimes I'm going to show it to you when you least expect it, and I'm going the other way, right? So it is good as long as you're aware. All right, so let's get into the kind of meat and potatoes here, Coach, and that's how do we make these in-season adjustments? So what are we doing to whether it's a kid, maybe we got to replace the quarterback, maybe it's a scheme, maybe we're going gap scheme, the zone, whatever that big change is. Kind of how do you go about doing that?
Well, you better have a system in place with at least the terminology to do so. Now, I think that's where a lot of guys kind of get in trouble is when they put their systems together, they don't think about all the different things that may morph or evolve into. Like we're a shotgun wing team, so but we can quickly get into, if we need to, we could get into trips, we could get into empty, we could get into a flex look where we're almost in a 2x2 look. So we have that terminology built in because we sat down at the beginning, we came up with all this and said, okay, what am I going to do to be able to get into this or get into that or get into this or get where I have the ability now? I'm not limited. I don't have to just come up with some random thing and it doesn't even make sense with what we're doing to
Right.
get into this set. Okay, so I think you need to have the terminology first. Same thing on defense. Like we're a 3-4 base. That's what we base out of. And if you play us, you're going to see us probably in about 15 different looks because we have the ability, terminology wise, to get into a 5 front, to get into a 4 front, to get into a 5-3, a 3-3, to get into all kinds of looks because we have words that talk to different kids and we have terminology to allow us to do that. And the idea behind it was, one, we want to have the ability to do that stuff. Two, we want to be protected in case we have injuries and we had to get into a different look. So I'll use defense first, then we'll go to offense. So again, we're a 3-4 team. What happens when we're down a DB? So now we really only have 3 DBs we're very comfortable playing. Well, I mean, we're not going to just throw a kid out there just so we can say we're in a 3-4.
Right.
We have a terminology where we can take that strong safety, we call him a dog, and put him in the box and basically get to a 3-3 stack, and run cover 3 behind it. Our kids probably don't even know what that is. Like they just know the terminology we would use to get into that, where we can plug a guy in that's playing dog or safety who's now really a Mike linebacker, and now we're into a 3-3 stack. Or we could take a guy and plug him into our outside linebacker spot who's really a D end and put him on the tight end, and now we're a 3-4, but really it was like a 4-3. So that's the kind of stuff you've got to have built in to your terminology where you can get to those looks and not have to throw something. Because I'm telling you, you try to throw in a new defense that you have not run all year, it's not going to go well. But if you can use your own terminology and just change your front or jump a tendency or attack something, that might work. You might have a chance there. Same thing on offense. Offensively, we can get into a lot of different looks, and we can highlight different things because year to year, depending on our personnel, this year we're probably throwing the ball, believe it or not, we're throwing the ball about 30 to 35% of the time, which you would never have thought you'd have heard from me. You know why? We got really good receivers, we got a good quarterback, and people are loading the box to stop the run. But there's been years where I didn't have those, and we've run the ball 90% of the time, and we've had to protect that by getting into empties and getting into misdirection and getting into overload bunches and getting into all kinds of different things because that was kind of what we had.
Right.
We didn't really have a ton of receivers, but we had 2 tight ends, so we could get into some 2 tight end with a wing, and now you're in a really heavy personnel package, and we're still running our same stuff. We're still running our same run plays. We're still running our same play actions. We're still running our same screens and RPOs out of a whole different personnel grouping. Last week, we put in a group we called speed group. So we took our wing off the field because remember our wing, and Daniel mentioned before the show started, that was my son. He's hurt. Okay, so we got a backup wing who's playing really well for us, but he's not super comfortable out there in space. So we wanted to go to a personnel package, take him off the field, put 3 receivers on the field, and get into a bunch of tight end trips. Okay. Well, like I mentioned, when we got into that, what did the defense do? They went 4 over 3 because we got 3 of our best players over there. We still ran our base stuff. It didn't change. We just were able to use personnel groupings to kind of help. I think offensively, That's one of the toughest things at the high school level is personnel groupings. Like, because most of the time, I'd say 8 to 10 years for us, our best 11 are on the field. Like, there's no reason to personnel group because you're getting worse.
Right.
Some years, though, you might have that it's kind of a blessing where, okay, tell you what, we've got these 2 or 3 kids over here, they're not bad, where we could get into a 2 tight end look, or we could get into a 3 receiver look, or we could get into a 2 running back look. At Searcy, I had that where I had 2 really, really good running backs. So we take our B off of the field and go, we call it Mustang, 2 backs, because those guys were really talented. So I think that's something you've got to constantly evaluate within your system is there a player who's playing well? How can I get him on the field? Like this year, we had a transfer come in from down the road. As he's played like last week for us, he had 95 yards receiving and a touchdown on 5 catches. Good ball player. Okay. We got to get him the ball more than 5 times. So now, okay, what if we put him at slot and hand him the ball on jet? What if we could move him, to wing and teach him how to run some stuff there? So those are the kind of things you've got to constantly be evaluating and working on. That kid's been working at wing with us for about 3 weeks now, just getting him ready for when that moment comes where we might want to plug him in there. So those are different things you've got to kind of always be aware of and be able to do. None of that works if you don't have the right terminology. And again, last thing I want to say on this is it's a lot easier when you're putting something new in to say this is the same as whatever you've been doing with these small tweaks. That's way easier than saying this is a brand new play or a brand new defensive set to everybody. Like that's going to be a lot of teaching and confusion.
I really like what you're talking about there on defense and the ability to just have terminology that puts you in a 3-3 or a 4-3 or a 3-4, whatever. I think the longer that I do this, I realize that like all the defensive fronts are the same, right? You're building, just about everybody's building into an over front or an under front or something. Sure, a 3-3 stack is blitzing a different kid every time, but they're still building the same exact front. So if you're a 3-3 coach and you need to go down to a 4-2-5 because you're missing a backer, but you have a lineman, you're not that far off, right? It's just very simple terminology. It's the same as this blitz. You're just permanently in that gap now. So it's not super complicated. So yeah, making those adjustments and maybe it means you've got to teach ball that way. You got to teach ball. It's concepts, man. Right. And kids have a harder time understanding that, right? But coaches shouldn't. You should be able to coach your coaches up to understand. At the end of the day, we're just a gap scheme team. It doesn't matter how we get there. If it's duo, power, counter, buck, pin and pull, whatever you're going to run. Look, it's gap down backer, and we're going to pull somebody. And here's the differentiating reason why you would pull or run your gap down backer. So I think it's really, I love your system and the fact you've done that has just simplified everything down to it's easy to coach. It's easy for kids. And you can take a kid and make him a Swiss Army knife. Your defensive guy seems to have it going on too, right? Where the terminology is all very easy to pick up and it just tells you what to do. It sounds super easy. But sometimes getting in that tag world, you're allowed to do that a little more, right? Because if everything is a one word changes the entire defense, I always think back to like NFL coaches, right? They have to tag everything because they may pick up a guy out of the waiver wire in week 8. And it's like, hey, you got to go. We need you on the field. So I have to tag him and tell him what to do. Same thing in high school football. We all want to get down to where one word tells everyone what to do, but then that's a lot harder to trade a kid around. He has to memorize this word in 3 positions. And, so it's just like it is a lot easier to kind of find your comfort zone in those two and just make it work for you.
I do want to say one quick caveat here too for guys that are listening here, because if you're listening and you made it this far in the podcast, you might be sitting at 0-3 or 1-2 or whatever that is, and you're going, well, we got to do this, we got to do all these adjustments, we got to do this. Sometimes the adjustment is just getting really good at a couple things. Like sometimes the adjustment is just getting really good at what you're already kind of good at. Like your adjustment might be looking at your practice schedule and saying, we suck at down blocks. Are we building that in? Why are we bad at down blocks? Or if you're a double, whatever it is, we're bad at tackling. Why are we bad at tackling? how can we build that in? So sometimes adjustments are not the fun stuff. Like a lot of us, the cheap, quick pill we want to take as a coach to fix everything is something we draw on a whiteboard. That's not usually what turns your team around. What turns your team around is usually building on, like, yeah, it's great that my defensive coordinator can get into all these looks. If we suck at tackling and we suck at reading blocks and we suck at, then he could run whatever front he wants, and it's not really going to matter. Same thing on offense. I can run whatever set I want to run. If we can't block down and kick out, it's not going to matter. If we can't catch the ball, if we can't, all these little things that build on to that. The fun thing, it's almost like a pyramid, like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
The top of the pyramid is scheme and fun stuff. But if your base below it is not very good, the top's not going to matter.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Got to have a foundation. Sometimes you just got to get better at that foundation, right? And not worry about what you're going to make a change to. Awesome, Coach. I think we've kind of checked all the boxes here on this one. Let's get into our situation of the week. And I'm anxious to hear what you're going to do here, because it's a situation a lot of people have ran into. I was watching, I'm an Oklahoma Sooners fan, obviously, and I was watching our running backs the other day run square into the back of offensive guards and tackles, and it's these cats that are supposed to have been really good for a lot of years, and we keep waiting for their breakout season. But so that's our situation. Okay, you've got a starting running back. He's just not seeing the holes. They're there. Maybe a little cloudy sometimes, but they're there. Continues to run into his O-lineman or bounce kicks because he just thinks he can get to the outside and do better. How are you adjusting your game plan? Because you can't, coaching him up isn't working, obviously. So what are you doing to a game plan when your dude just can't see it tonight?
Yeah, you maybe figure out what he can do well. Because the easy thing would be to say, take him out and put the next guy in. Okay,
can't, right?
That may not be an option if we're coaching high school football and he's your best kid. And so, there's what is he doing well? So maybe he's struggling with that. Can I get him involved in the passing game? Can I get him a screen? Can I toss sweep out there to him where there's not a whole lot to look at? Can I get him? It's almost like a basketball player, in my opinion. Like, you're 0 for 4 from 3, go get a layup. Go get you an easy one here, and maybe it'll open up for you. We're fortunate to kind of have the little sideline replay thing, so we get them over there on the TV and show them, and then kind of walk through. It's easy to say it's there, you got to see it, but sometimes they need to actually visually see it. So if we can show them that'll help. Maybe I can get them a layup on some kind of screen to him. We've got several different ways we can get our running back going where if we're not blocking it well, we can get him out there on the edge where don't need a lot of vision out there, just catch it and go make a play. So those are some things you can do. I think a lot of it is it may just be go away from him for a little bit, try to let somebody else get going. And honestly, and maybe let him sit for a little bit. If you can afford to do that, it might be let him sit and let the backup run the ball a little bit. And if the hole's there and he can kind of catch his breath, in my experience, most guys aren't back there going, how can I sabotage coach and suck? So probably yelling at him is not going to work.
Right.
You've got to coach him up and get him going a little bit. But that's a common thing. I think, again, I try to find a way to get him some space. It might be putting him out there and throwing him a screen. And I've mentioned that a few times, but that tends to be an easy way to get our guy going a little bit is get him the ball out in space. Hopefully you're going to get a positive play out of that and then maybe get him moving.
I love it. We'll move on here to what not to do as a coach. Your wife handled this a couple weeks ago, and she gave us a great lesson, and that was football wives, do not turn to social media to vent or even to try to defend your coach. Social media is not the place for you to have conversations that are hard, easy, whatever. And I kind of want to go same way with coaches here. So, Jamie, I'm stealing yours directly, basically. I've obviously my Facebook. I don't use Facebook very much. In business, I've started using it more because we opened up a food truck last week, and we're trying to use it to get people to come out and eat and plan things, etc. And all of a sudden, I have a coach who has popped up, and it is complaints about refs. It is complaints about their linemen. It is complaints about this, and we're talking admin. We're talking about the groundskeeper. And all I'm seeing is complaints. And I want to caution you guys. The same thing here is like social media is not the place to go vent anything. Right. And I know it's very easy because it's a fairly toxic place. And if you can get some dirt out there, people will jump on and you will feel very justified in posting it, you know? But that it all has negative consequence. There's no positive going to come out. There's not one single offensive lineman's mom who got on there and was like, you know what, son, you're not doing this right. And so we're going to go get you a personal trainer and make you a better football or player. That's not going to happen. Right. So you're setting the trap for yourself. So I want to just I'm still straight from Jamie because it works for the wives and it should work for the coaches too. But
here's the deal and she has had a lot of experience on that because I've had a lot of people that don't like me on social media where she's wanted to say something and kind of has backed off of it because like you said, negative comments, going to try another negative comment. If you coach long enough, guys, I don't know if you know this, but not everybody's happy. And the longer you coach, the more unhappy people are out there. And, to me, social media, sometimes it's a platform for idiots. Unfortunately, everybody gets an equal voice and they all get an account. Nobody tests IQs before they give you an account on Facebook. So
that's right.
You just kind of leave it for what it is.
Yeah. Sweet, man. Real quick, I want to mention our sponsors, Ace Sports, mark.bridges@acesports.com. If you want to start looking into a board, once again, you can DM me and I can kind of bridge that gap so that you're not talking to a stranger. Winning Edge Performance Analytics. Doug's built a great product, winningedgeperformanceanalytics.com. You got to top out the entire website the first time. Otherwise, it takes you to his Facebook. It's a whole confusing thing, but he's doing great things over there. Social media, I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter /X. You can find me at Daniel Bryce Chamberlain on Facebook. Email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Kenny, where can we find you, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So FBCoachSimpson.com's website. Got a ton of information over there. We put an email out this week. A ton of guys were hitting up. We got the call sheet, like an adjustable call sheet. A lot of guys really enjoyed that. So all that stuff's over there. A lot of downloadable, emergency action plan, roster forms, just things that you probably might need. You can go get. Of course, there's books over there too. And then over at Twitter, FB Coach Simpson, and then FBCoachSimpson@gmail.com. I do my best to try to, at least within about 2 days, I try to respond to any email I get. So if you got a question on football, I'll do my best to at least try to get back to you.
Perfect. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter /X. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.